Built to last and born to ride, these motorcycles are more than machines. They're old friends, forged in steel and stubborn will, carrying the spirit of freedom older riders know by heart. Decades have passed, yet they still thunder down the road, proving that true legends never quit the ride. These 10 bikes are the ones that outlived their owners. Bike number 10, Yamaha XS650, 1968 to 1985. The bulletproof twin that keeps kicking. If you've ever heard an old-school mechanic talk about simple bikes that never die, the Yamaha XS650 will be near the top of the list. First launched in 1968, it was Yamaha's answer to the British parallel twins of the era, but with Japanese reliability baked in. More than 50 years later, you can still find these bikes firing up after decades in barns, sheds, and even under tarps in backyards. The heart of the XS650 is a 654cc parallel twin with a 360-degree crank. That means both pistons rise and fall together, giving it that classic thump without overcomplicating the engine design. Unlike many British twins of the era, Yamaha used high-quality metallurgy and tighter tolerances, so these engines don't shake themselves apart. Maintenance is straightforward. You've got easily accessible tappets for valve adjustments, a simple points ignition. Many owners upgrade to electronic for even more reliability, and a chain drive that lasts if you keep it lubricated. The engine will happily run 80,000 to 100,000 miles without major work if you change the oil every 2,000 miles, something many owners still do religiously. Parts are still widely available thanks to a massive global fan base. Even if you need a crankshaft or gearbox part, aftermarket suppliers and online communities make sourcing them easy. The XS650's design also plays a role in its survival rate. At around 430 pounds dry, it's light enough to avoid the heavy crashes that retire larger touring bikes. And because it has a simple tubular frame with no complex electronics, it can sit unused for years and be revived with basic mechanical skills. Here's the truth. The XS650 outlives its owners not because it's magic, but because it's repairable. Modern bikes with complex electronics often get scrapped when repairs cost more than their value. The XS650, it's basically a mechanical time capsule you can keep riding forever. But if you think the Japanese made the only unkillable classics, wait until you see what the Italians built in the 1970s that's still racking up miles today. Bike number 9, Moto Guzzi Le Mans MK1, 1976 to 1978. The Italian V-twin with 9 lives. When people think of Italian motorcycles, they usually imagine fast but fragile machines that spend more time in the garage and on the road. The Moto Guzzi Le Mans MK1 proves that stereotype dead wrong. Born in the mid-1970s, this sport touring machine combined performance with a level of durability that's kept it alive for decades, and many are still daily riders today. The Le Mans uses Moto Guzzi's signature 90-degree transverse V-twin, an 844cc air-cooled workhorse with shaft drive. That shaft drive is a big part of why these bikes last. No chain to stretch, no sprockets to replace, and almost zero maintenance beyond changing the gear oil. The engine itself is massively overbuilt, with forged pistons, big cooling fins, and roller bearings that seem to last forever. Many Guzzis have gone 150,000 miles without a rebuild, and even when a top-end refresh is needed, it's a weekend job for a home mechanic. One of the secrets to the Le Mans' longevity is its layout. The transverse V-twin leaves the cylinders sticking out into the airflow, so they stay cool even. Bike number 8, Honda CT90 or Trail 90, 1966 to 1979. The indestructible trail companion. If there's one bike that proves slow and steady wins the race, it's the Honda CT90, also known as the Trail 90. From the mid-1960s to the late 1970s, this small step-through motorcycle became a global workhorse. Farmers, hunters, postmen, and explorers swore by it. And many of those same bikes are still running today, with nothing more than basic maintenance over half a century. The CT90's engine is an 89cc air-cooled single-cylinder that makes around 7 to 8 horsepower. On paper, that's barely more than a lawnmower. But here's the thing. The motor is built with a rugged pushrod valve system that's almost impossible to kill, and it'll happily run on low-octane or even questionable fuel if you're in the middle of nowhere. Pair that with a carburetor that can be stripped and cleaned in minutes, and you've got an engine that laughs in the face of neglect. One of the Trail 90's genius features is its dual-range gearbox. With the flip of a lever, you can switch to an ultra-low gearing that lets you crawl up steep trails at walking speed without cooking the clutch. This made it a favorite for backcountry riders who needed torque more than speed. Durability isn't just in the engine, it's in the frame. The CT90's step-through steel chassis is incredibly tough, and its low 30-inch seat height makes it almost impossible to drop in tricky terrain. The bike weighs just 188 pounds, so even if you tip it over, you can pick it up with one hand. Real-world examples? In rural New Zealand, farmers still rely on 50-year-old CT90 machines to herd livestock, often with well over 40,000 hard miles on them. In Alaska, hunters use them for deep woods access where ATVs can't fit. And in Australia, postal workers once delivered mail on CT90 bikes for decades. Rain, shine, or 110 degrees Fahrenheit heat. Cost-saving tip. You can still buy almost every part for a CT90 brand new from aftermarket suppliers, often for under $50 a component. That's why many of these bikes are revived after sitting in sheds for 20 years. Fresh gas, new spark plug, oil change, and they're good to go. The myth that small bikes wear out fast is busted right here. A CT90 isn't fast, but it's dependable in the same way an old tractor is. Slow, steady, and built to keep going long after flashier machines are scrap metal. But if you think only small engines live forever, wait until you meet a full-sized inline 4 that survived decades of police duty without missing a beat.
Bike number 7, Kawasaki KZ1000, 1977 to 1989. The police workhorse that won't retire. Some motorcycles earn their stripes on the racetrack. The Kawasaki KZ1000 earned its reputation patrolling city streets, often with flashing lights on the back. For more than a decade, police departments across the United States relied on this machine for its combination of speed, durability, and mechanical toughness. And here's the kicker. When many of those units were finally retired, they still had decades of life left in them. At its core is a 1015cc air-cooled inline 4 that makes about 90 horsepower in civilian trim, slightly less than police spec for reliability. This motor is understressed, meaning it's tuned well below its maximum potential. That's a big reason it lasts so long. The engine isn't constantly pushed to its limits. Many owners have reported KZ1000 hitting over 200,000 miles without ever opening the bottom end, provided oil changes and valve checks were done on schedule. Kawasaki built this bike like a tank. The crankshaft spins on roller bearings instead of plain bearings, reducing friction and extending life. The gearbox is equally overbuilt, with wide, strong gears that shrug off hard launches. Massive cooling fins help shed heat, even during hours of idling in traffic on hot days, something police duty demanded regularly. Maintenance is refreshingly straightforward for a liter bike. The carburetors are easy to sync, the valves are adjusted with simple shims, and the electrical system is basic compared to modern bikes. Even major jobs like replacing a clutch or alternator can be done in a home garage with hand tools. Here's the hidden truth. These bikes weren't just tough mechanically. They were built for real-world abuse. Police units would spend hours at low speed, then be pushed to 100+ miles per hour in a pursuit, and then idle again. That kind of duty cycle would destroy many modern sport bikes. But the KZ1000 took it in stride. Cost-saving insight. There's still a strong market for NOS, new old stock, and reproduction parts, meaning you can rebuild a KZ1000 from the frame up without hunting rare components. And because the police spec models shared most parts with civilian versions, spares are everywhere. It's not flashy. It's not delicate. It's a hammer in motorcycle form, and if you treat it right, it'll outlive you without breaking a sweat. The next bike on our list is a German adventure machine that's been crossing deserts, mountains, and entire continents for over 40 years, and it's still in production today. Bike number 6. BMW R80G/S, 1980 to 1987. the adventure pioneer that never stopped traveling. If modern adventure bikes are like luxury SUVs, the BMW R80G/S is the stripped-down, all-terrain Land Rover of motorcycling, built to get dirty, cross continents, and still be running decades later. Launched in 1980, it was the first true GS model and essentially invented the adventure touring category. More than 40 years on, thousands of them are still out there, many having circled the globe multiple times. The R80G/S is powered by a 797cc air-cooled, two-valve boxer twin. This engine layout, cylinders sticking out horizontally, not only gives it a low center of gravity, but also keeps both cylinders fully exposed to cooling air. That means less heat stress even in desert conditions. It makes a modest 50 horsepower, but the torque delivery is broad and smooth, which is exactly what you want when climbing a rocky trail or passing a truck on a remote highway. One of its keys to longevity is the shaft drive. Unlike chains, which stretch and wear out, a properly maintained shaft drive can last the life of the bike. Add BMW's simple carburation, strong steel frame, and minimal electronics, and you have a motorcycle that can be stripped and rebuilt anywhere in the world, even with basic tools. The R80G/S also has a reputation for being field repairable. Travelers in Africa and South America have kept them going with improvised parts, wooden spacers for suspension, re-welded racks, even homemade gaskets. BMW's parts support is still strong, and aftermarket suppliers make everything from upgraded suspension to modern lighting that bolts right on. Real-world example: many of the Paris-Dakar rally bikes from the 1980s, the ones that actually raced thousands of miles through brutal terrain, are still being ridden today, often by their second or third owners. Cost-saving tip: buying an R80G/S in decent shape might not be cheap, but running costs are surprisingly low. Fuel economy is around 45 miles per gallon, and maintenance is so straightforward that many owners do every job themselves, from valve adjustments to final drive service. It's living proof that if you build a motorcycle with simplicity, durability, and repairability in mind, it can outlast not just one owner, but several generations. But if you think adventure bikes have the monopoly on longevity, the next machine proves that even high-mileage touring bikes can still be road trip ready after 40 years. Bike number 5, Honda Goldwing GL1100, 1980 to 1983. The touring sofa that refuses to retire. When the Honda Goldwing GL1100 came out in 1980, it was the king of long-distance comfort. Riders called it a two-wheeled car because of its smooth ride, plush seat, and reliability that made cross-country trips almost boring in their lack of breakdowns. What's more surprising, many of these early Goldwings are still logging thousands of miles every year, often with original engines. Underneath the bodywork is a liquid-cooled, horizontally opposed 4-cylinder engine, producing around 81 horsepower. The flat-4 layout is inherently balanced, which means less vibration and less wear on internal components over decades of use. The GL1100 also came with a shaft drive, reducing maintenance to little more than occasional oil changes in the final drive housing. Honda designed this bike for mile-eating reliability. The cooling system uses a robust radiator and water pump that can last decades with proper care. The alternator is strong enough to power heated gear, lights, and radios without stressing the system, which is why so many touring riders loaded these bikes with accessories. One of the hidden reasons for the GL1100's survival is its easy life. Most owners bought them for touring, not racing, so they were rarely abused. They spent their lives at steady highway speeds, which is the mechanical equivalent of a light workout for an engine. Even better, the Goldwing community is massive. There are clubs, forums, and suppliers dedicated entirely to keeping old wings on the road. Need a carburetor rebuild kit? It's in stock. Want to replace a 40-year-old seat cover? You can buy it pre-stitched to factory specs. Real-world story: a 1981 GL1100 in Arizona recently rolled past 300,000 miles. Same engine, same gearbox, still used for annual multi-state trips. Cost-saving insight: these early Goldwings are often undervalued. You can buy a running example for under $3,000. Do some preventive maintenance: timing belts, coolant flush, carb cleaning, and have a touring machine that can reliably carry you across the country for another decade. It's a reminder that sometimes the bikes built for comfort and reliability, not speed, are the ones that truly stand the test of time. The next bike in our countdown is a British single-cylinder legend that was designed for work, loved for its simplicity, and kept alive by riders all over the world for more than 70 years. Bike number 4, Royal Enfield Bullet 350 1948, to present the longest-running production motorcycle. If longevity had a poster child, it would be the Royal Enfield Bullet. First introduced in 1948 and still in production today, it holds the record as the longest continuously produced motorcycle model in history. While modern versions are updated, the classic Bullet 350 design is still simple enough to keep examples from the 1950s, 1960s, and 1970s running without breaking the bank. The heart of the older Bullet 350 is a 346cc air-cooled, single-cylinder engine producing about 19 horsepower. It's not fast, but it's famously durable. The low-revving, long-stroke motor generates plenty of torque at low speeds, which reduces internal stress and allows the bike to cruise comfortably for decades. Combined with a 4-speed gearbox and robust clutch, it's mechanically straightforward and forgiving. One reason the Bullet has outlived so many of its riders is its mechanical accessibility. Every critical component, from the pushrod valve train to the gearbox, can be serviced with hand tools. Riders in remote parts of India, Africa, and South America have been known to repair a Bullet roadside with nothing but pliers, a wrench, and recycled gasket material. The steel frame is overbuilt for its modest power, meaning no frame fatigue or cracks even after decades of rough roads. And because the Bullet was designed to handle poor road conditions, it rides comfortably, even on broken pavement or dirt tracks. Parts availability is unmatched. You can buy reproduction or OEM parts for every nut, bolt, and bearing, often for a fraction of the cost of Japanese or European spares. A full top-end rebuild kit can cost less than $150, making long-term ownership extremely affordable. Real-world example: there are documented Bullets in India that have passed from grandfather to father to son, racking up hundreds of thousands of kilometers with nothing more than routine maintenance. Cost-saving tip: if you own a vintage Bullet, upgrading to modern electronic ignition and better quality bearings can improve reliability without affecting its originality. The Bullet proves that motorcycles don't need to be powerful or complex to be eternal. They just need to be repairable and built with purpose. But if you think the Bullet's longevity is impressive, the next bike survived for decades in a far harsher environment, the African savanna and beyond. Bike number 3, Yamaha XT500 1976 to 1989. The Desert King that conquered everything. When Yamaha released the XT500 in 1976, it wasn't just another enduro bike. It was the start of a legend. This rugged single-cylinder machine dominated the early Paris-Dakar rallies and built a reputation as one of the toughest dual-sport motorcycles ever made. Many XT500 from the 1970s and 1980s are still being used for adventure travel today, often with minimal restoration. Its 499cc air-cooled, 4-stroke single makes about 32 horsepower. Nothing earth-shattering, but the torque is broad and steady, perfect for off-road climbing or carrying heavy loads. The engine uses a simple overhead cam design, a dry sump oiling system, better cooling, and a big flywheel for smooth, tractor-like power delivery. One of the XT500's greatest strengths is its simplicity. No electric start, kick only, no water pump, no unnecessary electronics, just a rugged motor bolted into a steel tube frame. The bike's total dry weight is around 300 pounds, making it easy to handle on rough trails and simple to recover if it tips over. The XT500's desert racing heritage means it's overbuilt in key areas. A strong crankshaft, wide ratio gearbox, and air filtration designed for dusty environments. These features made it a favorite not just for rally racing, but also for farmers, explorers, and overland travelers in Africa, Australia, and the American West. Real-world proof: XT500 from the late 1970s. Still compete in vintage off-road events, often on original frames and engines. In remote regions of Morocco, they're still a common sight among tour guides, who need machines they can trust to get in and out of the desert without failure. Cost-saving insight. The XT500's huge popularity means parts are still readily available, from original spec pistons to complete replica exhaust systems. And because it's easy to work on, labor costs are minimal, or zero if you do it yourself. The XT500 busts the myth that hard use equals short life. In reality, a well-built machine designed for tough terrain can rack up decades of service and still be ready for the next adventure. The next bike in our countdown is a Japanese V-twin cruiser that wasn't flashy, but proved so reliable that many examples are still hitting the open road 40 years later. Bike number 2. Honda Shadow VT 1100 1985 to 2007. The V-twin that just won't quit. When Honda introduced the Shadow VT 1100 in the mid-1980s, it was seen as a direct challenge to American cruisers, especially Harley-Davidson. What Honda ended up creating was one of the most bulletproof V-twin motorcycles of all time. Even now, 20 to 30 years after production ended, it's common to see these bikes still running flawlessly with 6-digit mileage. The VT 1100's 1099cc liquid-cooled, 45-degree V-twin makes around 67 horsepower and a hefty dose of torque at low RPMs. But here's the real secret to its longevity. It's tuned for relaxed, low-stress cruising. The engine rarely needs to rev high, which means less wear and tear over decades of use. Honda's design focus was on durability. The liquid cooling keeps operating temperatures stable in any weather, and the shaft drive means no messy chain maintenance and far fewer driveline wear issues. The Shadow's 5-speed transmission is nearly indestructible, with wide, strong gears and a heavy-duty clutch. The electrical system, often the Achilles heel of older cruisers, is straightforward and overbuilt. Upgrading the regulator and rectifier and installing modern sealed connectors can make it even more reliable than when it left the factory. Real-world proof? Owners report VT 1100 exceeding 150,000 miles with nothing but routine maintenance. Oil changes, spark plugs, brake pads, and the occasional coolant flush. Many touring riders still choose them today because they can buy a 25-year-old Shadow, throw on new tiers, and confidently ride cross-country. Cost-saving tip: because Honda built so many VT 1100, used parts are plentiful and cheap. You can often find an entire spare engine for under $500, which makes long-term ownership a bargain compared to most large cruisers. The VT 1100 proves that a cruiser doesn't need to be flashy or expensive to last. Built for steady use, not abuse. It's the kind of bike that will keep starting up long after its first and maybe even second owner is gone. And now for our number 1 pick, a small displacement Honda that became one of the most produced motorcycles in history, outlasting owners on every continent. Bike number 1. Honda Super Cub C50, C70, C90, 1958 to present. The bike that changed the world. If there's one motorcycle that has truly outlived its owners on a global scale, it's the Honda Super Cub. Since its debut in 1958, over 100 million units have been built, making it the most produced motor vehicle in history. This is the bike that put much of the developing world on 2 wheels, and it's still doing it today. The Super Cub's engine ranges from 49cc to 89cc, depending on model, with a simple overhead cam or pushrod design and a semi-automatic clutch. The output is modest, about 4 to 8 horsepower, but the durability is extraordinary. Many Super Cubs run for decades without an engine rebuild, especially when basic maintenance is followed. The key to the Cub's survival is its simplicity. The step-through steel frame is tough. The drum brakes are easy to service, and the enclosed chain reduces wear from dirt and water. The low power output means the engine is never stressed, and the fuel economy, often 150 plus miles per gallon, makes it incredibly cheap to operate. One of its most overlooked strengths is global parts availability. No matter where you are, a fishing village in Vietnam, a mountain town in Colombia, or a city in Africa, you can find someone who can fix a Super Cub, often with locally made parts. Real-world stories of endurance are endless. In Southeast Asia, it's common to see 40-year-old Cubs still used daily for deliveries, hauling loads that would make a scooter cry. In Japan, some original 1960s Cubs are still owned by the same families, having passed through generations. Cost-saving insight. Because of its global popularity, almost every part is available, new and cheap. A complete engine rebuild kit can be bought for under $100. That means even severely worn examples can be brought back to life for pocket change. The Super Cub busts every myth about motorcycle longevity. It's small but tough, cheap but reliable, and simple but effective. It's proof that a well-designed machine, when supported with parts and knowledge worldwide, can literally keep rolling for half a century or more, often outlasting the people who first rode them home.